great to see you all. Good to see the smiles. I'm going to miss you all. And yes, I'm Reverend Maurene, and I'm going to talk to you about change today because it's going to be my last talk for a while. Robert and I are leaving on Wednesday to go to Oahu, and I'm going to spend time with family members. But I wanted to personally thank all of you. It's been wonderful. It's been great. You've really helped me explore principle, because when you speak about something, you have to have a good understanding of it. So it was a great opportunity for me. Thank you. And I especially want to thank Reverend Kate. Thank you, Kate. And because I'm experiencing great change, which has a rippling effect, other people are affected by my change, I thought I would discuss change and changeless. And thank you for the reading, Robert. So what is the metaphysical lesson about change? As we said before, God is changeless. Everything else is changing. And I wanted to talk about embracing change with Aloha. Now, some of you may not truly understand Aloha. I used to live in Hawaii, and Aloha is more than hello or goodbye. It comes from the Polynesian, and essentially the alo is presence, means presence, and the ha means spirit or breath. So it's very similar to in India, where you say, Namaste, I honor the spirit within you. I honor that presence. That's really aloha. It's the breath. And I know that every event in my life has led up to now. It's just sometimes it's hard to embrace this change. Now, the metaphysical principle that Ernest talked about, he said, creation means the giving of form to the substance of mind. Spirit is changeless, within which must take place all change or manifestation of itself. The infinite of itself is formless, but within it are contained all the forms, all of us, all the forms of creation. Forms come and go, but the power back of them is changeless. So this week, I was feeling pretty anxious. I was packing a suitcase, and I'm going, what do I take? What am I going to forget? And I noticed that I felt this tightening. So I thought, okay, let's go meditate. And anytime you have a problem with change, meditation is a great tool to use, because meditation allows you to come into that presence, that changeless part of you. We're all spiritual beings. We all are one with spirit, and we all have this holy of holies, I call it, that center, that heart, that love that we are, that we truly are, that we can become one with. And we already are one with it, but sometimes we have to dig it out from under the covers. So I was thinking about change, and I think I've told this one before. When I lived in Portland, Oregon, I went to the airport, and at the coffee shop, they had a little cup, and the sign said, if you don't like change, leave it here. Well, I thought, I wish it were that easy. George Carlin, he's one of my favorites. He said, just when I discovered the meaning of life, they changed it. And Sunday before last, I was talking about science and calculus and infinity, the infinity sign. Well, did you know, not that I'm trying to get you to love calculus, but it's the mathematical study of continuous change. So keep that in the back of your mind someday. And then I also told half of a joke before the wise Zen master was visiting New York, and he comes up to the hot dog vendor and he says, make me one with everything. Well, the hot dog vendor fixes the hot dog and hands it to the Zen master, and the Zen master gives him a $20 bill. and he puts it away in the cash box. And the Zen master says, excuse me, my change? The vendor responds, change must come from within. Ernest Holmes wrote a book with Willis Kinnear called A New Design for Living, and he said, we're all living in a world of continuing change, a world in which thought and things and experience are all in a constant state of flux. It's the very nature of the universe that there should be continual change. It's a living world, the creation of a living creative intelligence. We should never be afraid of change, never fearful. Instead, we should bring to bear on each new event the influence that is founded on an inward calm, a sense of certainty and peace, which will reflect itself in the changing scene of our everyday life. So, I also remembered something, I meditate, but it doesn't always stick the next day. That's why we do it every day, we try. But Ernest said, it was interesting, he said, nature will not let us stay in any one place too long. She won't let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is wise, for should we stay too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands change in order that we may advance. Okay, so change is necessary and constant, but how do we accept this change? And what about change that comes from within versus something outside of us? And what about timing? And lastly, change can be scary. I remember in 7th grade, change was really scary going to middle school. But most people think of change as moving to another city. Sometimes your parents dragged you to another city, or you got a job that you were willing to go to another city. And that makes a big difference on how you accept change, whether you initiated it or someone else forced it on you. And we talk about that being a victim versus through me, as me, rather than to me. And it's important to think about the gifts that you have in that change, because in thinking about that gift, you basically go forward on a positive note. So most people, they change relationships, they change jobs. Body goes through puberty, goes through aging. Your body is not the same body it was before breakfast. It's not the same body it was yesterday or last year. And you're always changing. Look at plants. Look at plants. If they're not growing, they're dying, and so are you. So you have to change. So what is the difference between change, any change? I think some of it is control. We have control over certain changes we make and others we don't, and they become harder to accept. I think Wayne Dyer said, once you recognize change as the inevitable condition of being human, you will be more inclined to welcome it in the significant parts of your own personal life. If you can get yourself used to the idea that change is wonderful rather than something to shun, you'll be on your way to new, exciting, risk-taking behaviors, which will give purpose to your life. So think of change as creative, because it is. That's what change is. We change forms all the time through our thinking. We use this creative power. We talk about it, we read it every Sunday, we say there's a power for good in the universe and I can use it. Yes, you use it every day, every moment that you're thinking, and you can more consciously use it to make greater changes in your life. But the result of change in our life is something new. and to be explored. But it's not good or bad. I know some people want to say change is bad, change is good. You know what William Shakespeare in Hamlet said? He said, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's actually neutral. Change is neutral. If it's easier for you to accept it, think of it that way, and look for the gift in it. And, you know, I look at, well, why do I get afraid of change? Sometimes it's, what will people think of me? Still working on that one. But sometimes we look around and we try to have control of something that we don't have control over. I think it's better to flow with your life. Remember what Ralph Waldo Emerson said about conformity? He said, it's the hobgoblin of little minds. I love that. Did you just see those little hobgoblins walking around? Charles Fillmore, he was a minister and founder of Unity Church. He said, as children outgrow their clothes, we outgrow our ideals and our ambitions, broadening our horizon of life as we advance. There must be a constant elimination of the old to keep pace with this growth. When we cling to the old ideas, we hinder our advance, or we stop it altogether. And Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mindset, or How to Use the Science Mind, said something similar. He said, each new horizon provides a fresh starting point for another fresh horizon that is pushed even further out. Progress is eternal. Unfoldment is everlasting. So we have a paradox, you know. At the center of this change, sometimes I call it chaos, there is this changelessness. You know, we see energy, well, in science, energy dancing and vibrating and going into new patterns. And in quantum physics, we see potentiality waves that coalesce into particles. And the particles then are dissolved and go back into energy. And, you know, the famous E equals mc squared. It's this dance that the universe does. Energy is changeless. That energy can change form, but it's never destroyed. So some things do remain the same. And I was trying to think, what remains the same in my life? And love of parents, love of siblings, love of beauty, love of the ocean. It's basically love. And what is love? God is love. God is changeless. So change leads us to this ever-growing, expanding consciousness. It's a never-ending process of evolution. And as we remember who we really are, spiritual beings, we realize our changeless nature. So sometimes change requires courage. You've heard of, I don't know if you're familiar with that word, it's a French word, courage. That means your heart. And it means that you basically, you know, courage is something that puts you out there to make that change. I mean, how many of you had the courage to raise a child? And you two are here today, you know. That takes courage to raise a child. It takes courage to accept a new job. It takes courage to commit yourself to a relationship, a marriage, a partner. And what about going on a vacation by yourself? You know, that my daughter went to Sweden to look up relatives. She went by herself, and it was like, whoa, that took courage. But to face the unknown, courage, you know, is basically love. So are you acting out of love? Remember that song? It's courage to get old. The Beatles, will you still love me? when I'm 64. Well, now it's squeezed, you'll love me when I'm 74, 84, 94. So Ernest Holmes said, to be spiritual is to create. All seeming change is merely the play of life upon itself. So think of it as playing, having fun. Creation is the passing of spirit into form and is eternally going on. So we can control our destiny. We know we can through our thinking. And change is a process for our own evolution, our own expansion, and our own growth. But we have to change our inner thinking. You know, how can you create health from thoughts of illness? It would be impossible to experience wealth with a feeling of poverty. So some of these things, Ernest says, just turn away from it. I mean, literally. Raymond Charles Barker said that too. Just take your body and turn away. You know, if people start talking about illness, turn away from it. People talk about, oh, I'm so poor this month. Turn away from it. Well, but because, you know, it is said, wherever you go, there you are. You remember from the 70s, you know, what time is it? It's right now. Where am I? I'm right here. Well, you can't get away from yourself. You know, your thinking is what has created and brought you to this point in time. If you want to change, you have to change your thoughts to change your life. Charles Darwin, who was a naturalist and scientist, he said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives. He said, nor the most intelligent, no, but the one most responsive to change. So this last week, Rosalind Carter, the former First Lady, passed. And I was thinking about Jimmy Carter, you know, and I read this about this guinea worm, and I go, what? A worm? You know, I knew he had worked for Habitat for Humanity, but I didn't know he was trying to eradicate a worm that was killing people, basically. And I read this on the internet. He said Carter spent the first 50 years of his life aspiring to higher office, and he became president, and in November 1980, with his failed presidential re-election bid, it all came crashing down. He could have retired, he could have cashed in on his fame, become cynical about public life, but instead, he committed to taking the long road on a few simple causes. One was eradicating guinea worm disease, which, when Carter started, afflicted 3.5 million people a year, causing immense suffering and exacerbating global poverty. It wasn't a flashy cause, you know, and it would not gain immediate headlines, but the disease was horrible and the fix was attainable. Today, thanks to the work of the Carter Center, there are fewer than 50 cases annually. When asked about his hopes in his old age, Carter said, I'd like for the last guinea worm to die before I do. Thank you, Jimmy. So, this is the season for Thanksgiving. So I give gratitude for Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. And also I want to give thanks to this group. Thank you. I want to give thanks to the people that are working on the changing and helping with exchange of hostages, and give thanks to the people that have stopped bombing. I want to give thanks to everyone who's supporting peace. And it is said Queen Leleokalani, who was the last queen, because she was put under house arrest, but she was the last queen in Hawaii, and she said, you know, aloha holds us all together. She said, Aloha has its own mana, which means life energy from God. No hate, no anger, no negativity. Aloha never leaves the giver. It flows easily through the giver and the receiver. So be aloha. And I want to teach you one word before I go. And she wrote this song, Aloha Oe. It's not oi. You know, you have to be careful in Hawaiian with your vowels. It's O-E, Aloha Oe. And it's like Spanish, A-E, O-U, A-E-E. So Aloha Oe, Aloha Oe. It means farewell, I love you.